To get started, we need a couple of supplies. You will want some kind of water dish. You have a paintbrush. You want your mixing tray. And you also want your paint. A couple of paper towels are nice to have on hand. The first thing you need to do is clean out your paint tray. I've already cleaned this one out. So you pop the color out. You clean this out really, really well. If it was used before and it's been sitting, it's going to be sticky and gross. So hot water, scrub it out. And then you can actually pop out all the colors and clean this piece as well. So I have already done that. Got the colors pop back in. I put them in order of the color wheel, or rainbow order, which is red, orange, yellow, green, blue, violet, and then I have brown and black on the end. And pop that back into its spot. You can use the top for mixing color, but that just makes a big mess. It's a lot of work every time you paint. That's why we use this one. So we're gonna start mixing some color. You can use the back of your big watercolor paper or tag board, whatever you have. I have tag board. The color is going to mix nicer on watercolor paper. First, I will get a little bit of water, put it into one of these wells. Let's just start with kind of a standard color. We don't ever want to simply take paint out and paint with it. We're always going to mix color in our wells. So if I take a little bit of red, mix it into the water. And do a little bit of red together and see how that looks. That's just red and water mixed together. Now, if you have watercolor paper, it's going to bleed into the paper in a nicer way. I don't, so I'm going to end up with some pooling. Whenever I have pooling where one section is a little bit darker, I can take a little bit of paper towel and just absorb that, and I can smooth it out. If my brush has too much on it and it's still pooling, I can dab the brush a bit. So I want to get a nice smooth section. All right, so red right out of the dish is not that exciting. Anything right out of the box is not that impressive. So I want to add something else to it. I could tone it down just a bit by adding a little bit of brown, just a tiny bit. I'm not going to put that directly on the paper. I'm going to put that in the water dish, mix a little brown with my red. And that didn't seem to change too much. I'll put a tiny bit more. It starts to become a bit more muted. That wasn't a huge change. I can try a bit more. Now I have a really nice rusty brown, or more of a rusty red. Whenever you're using watercolor, you want to mix, okay? Everything that comes straight from the box is super boring. I mean, at least for me, because I've seen it so many times. So mix it up, try something new. Let's do, since we're working with red, let's try a little red, straight red. in another dish. This needs a drop of water. If you have too much water, it's going to destroy the paper. So you want to make sure you have enough pigment in there so it's a good balance. If your watercolor paper is getting destroyed, you're going to see a lot of pilling. That means like little dots all over, and that's the paper coming up. So right now I just have red and water. Let's make a red violet. So I'm gonna add a little bit of violet. If I didn't have violet, I could add blue because they're in the same family. So I have a red violet. I'm gonna test that out. Well, that's pretty. You'll notice that where the color has more water, it's going to get lighter. Okay. If I want to tone that down and make it more dull, more gray, I could add just a little bit of black to it. Makes it a little bit deeper. A little more black. This is still the violet, but it's quite a bit darker and deeper. Let's work with some complementary colors. So starting with our little bit of water and orange. Take a little bit of orange. I might need a little bit more. It's kind of watery. You don't want too much water. Okay, so this is just orange and water. It's very, very bright. If we put a very bright orange next to its very, very bright counterpart, the opposite of orange is blue. If these are next to each other, it's quite striking. If I put it right next to the orange and I didn't wait for the orange to dry, it'll bleed together. Opposite colors will make brown and this will make a mess. So if you want to put two colors next to each other, you need to wait for the first one to dry. You absolutely can stack colors next to each other, but the first one has to dry. So if I have a wet brush, this first color is quite dry. I can put that next to it. No bleeding. Very pretty. Okay, let's go back to what complementary colors can do. Why would we use two opposites? Well, I have orange to start with. If I add just a little bit of the opposite color, which is blue, to my orange, it takes the intensity down a bit. So my orange is no longer as bright and obnoxious. It's a little bit more neutralized. I could do even a touch more blue to that. Bring it down another step. Okay. So mixing opposite colors together, you can get these really, really nice neutrals. When you come up with the paint colors that you want to use for your project, I encourage you to do a little practicing, do a little mixing beforehand, decide what you like. Do you want a blue green? Do you want a red violet? Mix as much as you can and experiment, because the colors that come right out of the box are very standard and very boring, and we're much more interested in what you can create as the artist.